Hey everyone, it's Robert A. and thanks for joining us for Radical Book Talks this evening. Thanks for being here and bearing with us in the time that we spent. Uh, Appreciate you with the same two guests. We are discussing the same book, The Four Agreements. We're going in on the second agreement, which is one that I'm most excited to speak about, which is to not take anything personally. That's it. That's the title of the second agreement. And we're here today to just discuss a little bit about that agreement, what it's meant in our life and real life, everyday practice, and hopefully give some things that may be able to encourage you to incorporate in your life. If you haven't read the book, I recommend picking it up or listening to it on Audible or any of your Audible devices. I'm going to let both of our guests again introduce themselves quickly, starting with Rudy, and then we'll get started on our conversation.
Thanks so much, Robert. Pleasure to be back in the discussion. My name is Rudy Ruiz. I am a lifelong educator, first generation college graduate student, and trying to help other young people find and pursue their passions in life, and not just young people. So I'm really glad for the opportunity to discuss this book with you all and with anybody else who's tuning in today.
Stephanie.
Hi, thank you guys for having me again. I really appreciate it. My name is Dr. Stephanie Akumani. I'm the founder and CEO of Bloom. We're a health, wellness, and leadership company, and we focus on how we can really help create an intersection between diversity, equity, inclusion, empowerment, and wellness, and really thinking about what does it mean to be an ally in this time where we're so divisive, but to really come together on things that matter. And this book is a perfect example of how to do it. I'm a mom, I'm a yogi, a marathoner, and I'm all about just wellness and holistic well-being. So I love this book, and I'm grateful to talk about it today. Thanks.
Cool, thanks for being with us. If you're here with us watching on Facebook or YouTube or wherever the case may be, please let us know, in the chat if you want to join in on the conversation. If you have something to share, if you have read the book, if you have thoughts on what we discuss as we go forward, we would love to hear from you and discuss your thoughts. So I guess I'll open up the conversation with not taking things personally. And this has been the hardest one for me. And it's something that I still struggle with. In fact, Rudy and I had a conversation maybe about a month ago, where I was going off about some things that were going on in my life. And he drops me this one-liner that's like, what's the second agreement? And I'm so mad because like I wanted something more, but he was right. He was absolutely right. And it like shut down, my thinking because I was allowing other people's actions to dictate just my mood, my thought pattern, just clouding a lot of different things which were not in agreement with what I was trying to accomplish at the time. And so I really, really, really struggle with this one. So I'm going to talk about some things that I've been trying, but I'm going to be gleaning, from you guys more so about what you do, because this one for me is big, especially coming from where I come from. Right? You take everything personally. You have to, it's a means of survival, and then you transition into this new world where those skills don't work anymore. And it's like, you have to relinquish that. So it really, yeah, I'm looking to hear what you guys have to say on that. So just unmute yourself and let's discuss this second agreement.
Well, could I venture to say that did they ever work? And I don't, even though I know what you mean, I'm from Baltimore as well, and Southwest Baltimore, and I get it, like what you were saying about is a means of survival, but I'll never forget the first time that I was driving past. My parents picked me up from school, and that in itself is a luxury, right? And I remember looking out the window, and there were three girls, and they were young, like 7, and I was maybe 6. And I was staring at them because I liked their book bag. I don't even know why I was staring at them, but something interests me. But then I caught the eye of one of the girls, and she said, "What you looking at?" And I said, "Oh." Like I never had the type of interaction before until that moment. And I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. And so me staring at her, I really remember it was all positive, but she took it as a possible threat. And I never looked at anybody that long again. Um, but I say, is it really like us just taking in without realizing it more poison? And I've worked with so many girls where they saw it as like their reputation. It mattered. Even if the person didn't know, they did feel threatened. And I'm excited to see how this conversation can maybe help some youth not feel that way. Because if we all join in, then we won't need to feel collectively threatened.
Thanks for sharing that example, Stephanie. I actually have a similar anecdote also from from Baltimore. It was a unique experience couple of years ago. I don't know if it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. Was walking over by Penn Station, which is near where I used to work, and I try to do a good job of trying to encourage people and just cheer people up in general. And I remember I was walking by. Or maybe waiting at that Penn Station. In any case, kind of like you said, made eye contact with somebody. A couple guys were passing by and just smiled, general smile. And the one guy said to me, "Don't smile at me." And so I was kind of surprised by it, but I had to kind of laugh it off. Kind of thinking along these lines of don't take anything personally. I think a lot of posts these days do a good job of reminding us that we don't know what anyone is really going through, not only in their life, but really also, more importantly, perhaps in their mind. And so, we each are operating on our level of understanding and our level of experience and whatever we're going through. And so I think that that's, such an important thing to keep in mind. I don't know what that young man had gone through, and it sounds like it was pretty similar kind of background as what Robert was describing. But again, I could have let that ruin my day and ruin my outlook and ruin the way that I approach people and even life if I wanted to, go on a little bit in a sense. But again, knowing that he had other things that happened in his life that I had no idea about, I felt it was more important for me to kind of laugh it off, shrug it off, and keep doing me, so to speak.
Yeah, Rudy, don't take that personally, man. I'm over here laughing, but it's a regardless of what Stephanie says, we'll have a later conversation in depth, and we'll see what you guys think. He was just protecting himself, man. People search for vulnerabilities all the time, and don't take that personally. But I would have. I wouldn't have taken that personally because I understand it. But if I were you, I would have. So I'm glad that you didn't allow that to ruin your day because, I got some struggles with that. So what are some practices that you put in place preemptively? So before you get into a hot situation, I'm not asking for like a live situation yet. What practices do you put in place in your life to help you embody not taking things personally? Because situationally is one thing, but I think it's a shift in mindset. And I think I've shifted gears in that mindset, but I still run hot on a lot of things. Particularly like in the book talks about, making assumptions, right? Which we'll get into discussion later. But, if you like assuming certain things from certain people, right? And then you don't get that. And then it's like, I don't know. That slows my train down a lot. So what do you do as a proactive measure in your life to keep you in a place where you don't take anything personally?
Well, the first thing that I've had to do was and I say this out loud around my daughter as well, especially during the pandemic. I had to tell myself and really mean it that I'm not aiming to judge someone. Like I have to do a bias check and a judgment check because, for instance, the pandemic, when a lot of people wouldn't wear masks and a lot of my own friends wouldn't wear masks, I felt very frustrated and angry. And I realized, like, even my neighbors, I see them across the street having a cookout, 4th of July, and like numbers had spiked And I'm like, you guys don't have masks on. And I was really like just ranting about it, judging. So I realized that that was going to infect my daughter. And I used the word infect on purpose because I started to see her judge people also. And I was like, ooh, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted. So I had to actively fix my mistake out loud. So no matter what it is, I always ask myself, am I judging them? And how can I look at their perspective so that I can just observe it, just like in meditation? Like, can I observe my own thoughts, just see it, and just take what I need and leave the rest behind and keep it moving?
I would add to that I can't say that I never take anything personally. I think that I'm pretty good at having that be my general mode of operation, but I can't say that I'm always successful at it. One of the strategies, though, that I'll share that I think probably has a pretty easy to understand analogy. I've got now three teenage sons, and so my second son already is learning how to drive. He's got a driver's permit, and so pretty recently, sharing with him the idea of defensive driving. And so, thinking ahead of time in a sense, as far as, what could happen and being kind of ready to respond in a sense. And not that means to always be on your guard. But I think that there's an important connection between agreement one, which we discussed in our last talk, and then agreement two. And, recently I appreciated, Robert being able to come out and support my bid in my last chance qualifier attempt wrestling last week. And I think one thing I hadn't shared with him that was very a similar circumstance was way back now in 2004. I decided that I was going to compete in the U.S. Open, and I had never competed at that senior level before, and it had been I hadn't done a whole lot of training in a while, even back then, and so it was kind of a stretch to think that I could be competitive. And so, interestingly, I reached out to somebody who had been kind of a long time coach for me, and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make a run for it, trying to make it to the trials." And like I said, I was a lot younger back then, and so I was a little bit shocked at the time that like when I expressed that plan, this person, like I said, was close to me, basically said, "What trials?" And I said, "Oh, the Olympic trials." And he kind of laughed. And so at the time, I was just like a little bit in shock, but it also was kind of the beginning for me in a sense of realizing like, if other people don't understand where I'm at in my life and what have you, that that's just a reflection of where they're at. But it also kind of informed me coming into it this time, now that I am a lot older, and it was less realistic for me to be competitive. That even though I knew people would be inspired and whatnot by my effort, I also knew that if I overshared or shared too early, kind of with people who weren't ready to realize that I could put in the level of work to be ready, I would probably get a lot of discouragement, a lot of negativity. And going back to that agreement one, in terms of not not getting all that negativity speaking into your life, I had to also kind of guard myself and be careful to kind of build myself up. And also, not that I didn't want any constructive criticism, but wanting to make sure that I also wasn't setting myself up to be discouraged along the way. So I think those two kind of go hand in hand to make sure that you are setting yourself up with a support system that is truly going to be supportive to you is helpful. And then knowing that in some situations you're going to be with people who may say some things that will be hard to take, and so being prepared to not take something personally, I think is good. Just kind of thinking ahead of time about what you might be stepping into.
Can I add one thing to that? I think that's so important, Rudy, and I really appreciate you saying it because that's something that the book really said loud and clear to me. Like, if someone says something rude to you and you say, like, oh, that's hurting me. Now, of course, we want people to be civil and not to say things that aren't kind. But I think I really put this in the sense of also with diversity, equity, inclusion work. And at first I was getting offended by what he was saying, and then I had to not take that personally because I thought about it in the case of like, say someone said something racist to somebody, and so based on the book, and Ruiz, we're saying, and not Rudy Ruiz, but Don Miguel Ruiz, that I shouldn't be upset by the person that says something racist to me. And most people be like, of course I should be upset. Da, da, da. But I thought about it and I said, well, of course, this person, I want them to be the best human they can be. But the onus really is on me about what I let in. Can I just block? I think the way that so many of our great leaders were able to get so far around race relations was to block those people out, because we know that we're giving energy to things that aren't true, that don't matter, right? And we can't keep proving ourselves to be worthy when we already know we're worthy. So I think this is actually 100% revolutionary and something that we all can listen to. Now, it doesn't mean to block them out and just act like they're not there all the way. We figure out ways that we can galvanize to make sure that those people don't have power, right? But if we reframe our words to what we want, instead of focusing on their bad energy, we probably get what we want a little more because we're all focused. And I think that I can't wait to use this in my DEI work, because I think it will empower so many people to realize that those bad apples, their voices will not be loud enough when our voices are loud and focused.
Yeah, that's awesome that you said that, because that really touched me. And I'm gonna comment on it in a second. Just for a recap, if you're just joining us, we're discussing the second agreement of Don Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements, which is don't take anything personally. Feel free to share your thoughts in the chat if you'd like, so that we can discuss those with you. But Stephanie, what you said is what really I took away from the book. Is you don't take anything personally because of how it impacts you. Um, Primarily, that's you can have other moral and other reasons, but like how it impacts you is so important. And I had a moment like that today, um, where okay, so I'm shopping my script around to networks, and part of that process is you get feedback from someone in the network, and sometimes what happens is you'll get someone who doesn't particularly care for your type of genre, right? Like my script is an urban script. I get not a lot of people watch like urban drama. It's about school, but clearly they just did not understand, the and they praised it. This is the weird part. They praised it, but they gave it like really, really, really low scores, but said how great it was, and it was so like impact, and it was like it started to consume me a bit. I really had to take a step back, you know, and really examine it as just a roadblock, and one person's opinion, and another hurdle that I just have to get over and move around or whatever. But it really could have taken me over if I didn't stop myself. Like it really had the potential to really get big. Like I really felt, those old emotions that I used to feel and like would respond to. I like literally was going down this trail and I had to, stop. And like the only way I could do it was just to not take it personally and say, they don't understand the environment. They don't understand charter schools. They don't understand, there's a lot of educational gap that just created that. And I'm not going to take that personally. I'm still mad, but that's what I went through. So that was my way of practicing that second agreement today, so that I could even be on this call. Like sometimes my emotions, can just get me like just in my head space so much. So I was proud of that moment, and that's why I asked that question. So going to push the conversation forward a little bit, because we're running out of time, just a tad. What are two takeaways from the second agreement? Um, that were most impactful for you? So out of the chapter, it talked about relationships with others, and even the conversation that's in here, right? Like remember that you're talking and listening to yourself, at the same time. And that can be, well, I'll wait for you to share and then I'll share it. And what were some of the most impactful points from chapter 2, the second agreement of the book? Rudy, you go first this time.
Thanks. Yeah, just adding on to what we've discussed so far, I think as well, we of course kind of follow each other on social media and things like that, the three of us, and just knowing not only the three of us, but just so many others kind of in our network that are putting in work, like we talked about, whether it's through prayer, through meditation, through exercise, yoga, all kinds of different things that we're doing to kind of foster that peace, internally and with people around us. And I think, it's giving away your power, when you allow something to affect you, in that way personally. And it's like literally all that time and energy and work that you put in, you can't give up that power, allow somebody to kind of strip that away. I think that's one piece. And then I think as well, one thing I wanted to add to what was discussed by Dr. Stephanie with regard to the DEI piece too, is knowing that everybody has a story and everybody wants their story to be heard. And sometimes when people are sharing things that can be hurtful, it's kind of like that cliche, hurt people. And so sometimes it's a matter of using that opportunity to get an understanding. What makes you say that? Why do you say that? Or what do you mean by that? Can you tell me more about that? And sometimes not only is that disarming, and I think the proverb says, a soft answer, turns away wrath, something along those lines. But essentially, again, it kind of reopens up the conversation, and it allows you to, have a more productive conversation with a person sometimes, on that personal level. And like you said, Robert, when it comes to situations where maybe, you're never going to see that person face to face, maybe it's just an email, but realizing the growth that you've been through, with this script in particular, but also just in general, personal growth, not just for you, but anybody who's going through a personal growth process. Again, you can't let somebody's limited view of something that you've created or something that you've done to define you and to set you back.
I completely agree. Thank you, Rudy. That was really helpful. And the two parts that I took from the most are it hit me really hard when at the beginning he was like, somebody might say you're dumb. And you'll think to yourself, oh, wait, am I dumb? Are they clairvoyant? And I laughed when I read it because, I listened to the audiobook first and then I read the actual book. And I literally laughed when I heard it. It's like, no, they can't read your mind. You are literally making, like, that is so revolutionary. Like, when he says you're making an agreement to agree with them when you accept their poison, right? Their bad, like, judgment, their unhelpful comment. And, I've been, another thing that I've been doing is not calling something bad or good, but saying if it's helpful or unhelpful. Does it serve me or does it not serve me? Because now it might be for somebody else, right? But it's just not for me, and that's cool. So the part about realizing that no, the person that's your hater, they're not reading your mind. It's just that you can't, if you know you're amazing, like you can't wait for somebody else to tell you that. Like there are some posts, I'll post one thing on Facebook and it'll be crickets. Like no one will say anything, but I can see like people are viewing it. But I had to realize I really don't care because in the DM somebody's saying thank you. That helped me. And on Instagram it'll be like 80 or 100 people, but they're two different audiences, right? They're expecting different things. And I've gotten too many people in my DMs saying like, please keep sharing it. This motivated me to do this or that. And so I realized that like we have to live in this world of likes and comments, and we really can't, as the book says, like you can't wait on someone else to tell you you're amazing. You have to build that up and know it. You have to love and like yourself. And the last point, it was saying, where was it? It was about the poison. Like basically, I can't find it, but it was saying like when you agree with someone, you're eating their poison. And that these words, like they can start revolutions or they can start, well, positive revolutions or they can start wars. And, that was from the second one. But I think connecting those two dots that you can use your word to encourage yourself to not take things personally and know that your word has to be the end all be all. Not that you can't listen for other perspectives, right? But I always say, just like with we have to do with our mothers-in-laws or parents-in-laws with our kids, I had to realize this is my family now, and what is that person saying that is helpful? Let me use it. The rest, love her for who she is or who he is and keep it moving. That's all I have to say.
That's what's up. Thank you both for sharing. This for me, I mean, the entire chapter was powerful just because like it resonates on like don't take anything personally, like anything. you know, like anything, like like the self-talk you have when you want to tell yourself to snooze, on your alarm clock, like anything, right? Like don't tell yourself, oh, you're such a slouch, you overslept, you have this, and you can't take anything. And that was the hardest part for me. But I want to read something, and then we're going to get to a comment from Facebook. Thank you for commenting. If you want to join in on the conversation, by the way, please do so. But I want to read just an excerpt from the second agreement. If you can make this second agreement a habit, you will find that nothing can put you back into hell. There is a huge amount of freedom that comes to you when you take nothing personally. You become immune to black magicians, and no spell can affect you, regardless of how strong it may be. And remember, we took that black magic versus pure magic test. And it's kind of like the second agreement is kind of like the shield for that black magic, right? For those people that are going to talk down on you and going to, cast those negative spells and shoot that negative energy off of you. This is kind of like that repellent, like, get off of me. It's like, not the, but I still want to tap into, like, those in in present moments. I want to get to a comment on Facebook. Nicole said, I haven't been calling it agreement number 2, but I follow a personal rule of assuming positive intent. Not letting someone else's negative energy suck me dry or drain me has worked too. Love you, Robert. I love you too. This is my seventh grade science teacher, and I'm sure she's excited to be on this call because she didn't think I would be around, this long. But I was glad to see she was one of those teachers that, really stood in the gap for me. So thank you for being here and joining this conversation. Did you have something you wanted to say really quick, Rudy, about that
Thanks,
comment?
Robert. Yeah, yes, thanks. I like that advice about assuming positive intent. It's definitely helpful. I think there are times, though, that it's really clear that there was not necessarily positive intent. And so I think another takeaway I would share from this agreement is just the fact that whatever anybody says to you is really a reflection of them. And so I think that that also makes it easier, again, to not take things personally, because I think sometimes that causes us to reflect, wow, they might say something really hurtful, and you're realizing, wow, so I wonder what happened in their life that makes them feel that way, that makes them talk like this, that makes them, you know, respond to me in this situation, and gives you a sense of more likely to have a sense of empathy rather than to be hurt or angry about somebody's words.
See, the thing about that, oh, did you want to go something?
Yes, if you don't mind. One thing I realized that we all just did is not take the perspective of the fact that we can be the ones that can hurt the other person that might take it personally. And the excerpt about the mother that comes home, I think this was in this section. I hope it was. She it might have been in the first one. I can't remember now. But when the mom comes home and she yells at her kid for singing too loudly, and even though she knew she had a beautiful voice, but so we can think about our children, right? Maybe we had a bad day at work, or somebody said something to us that we took personally, and now we're letting it rub off on somebody else in our area. So it's not only do we need to do it for ourselves, but we will possibly affect the people around us. And then I thought about with Robert, you said you were so consumed by those companies, the networks. And I thought about this idea of gatekeepers, right? We talk about the power of our words, and we have to realize that we are gatekeepers too. So we have to protect our fortress ourselves, but also make sure that we are seemingly potential gatekeepers to someone else. So really realizing no, Robert, you could literally create your own media company right now, as you basically are by hosting these talks. And you can do it on your own. So if it doesn't work out with them, you can just create your own stuff, right? So realizing that we can't let anybody be a gatekeeper for us if they're not helping. I'll end it there.
No, thanks for that, and thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. There was something I was going to touch on that Rudy said. Oh, yeah. So it's I guess one of the struggles for me is because I really strive in my life to be impeccable with my word. Um, and when others aren't as attentive, I guess I assume the worst, in that I assume that they put more thought into what they were going to say to me. Not because I'm me, but because I put that much thought into before I spoke to you. And so I guess a lot of that assumption is what drives me to take even those moments personally. But I don't know. I don't know how. I know how to reflect after it happens, right? Like, oh, I'm letting this. I'm taking this personally, right? And I can get myself off the cliff. Is that natural? Do you guys just never go to the cliff? Am I asking a clear question?
I think part of it is there's a metaphor that goes with what I was sharing about earlier about how everybody has a story and they want to tell it. And even in the DEI work, there's this metaphor of your cup. And if you've got so much, whether it be trauma or just other, negative experiences often that have filled your cup so much that you can't even take in any new ideas, that even if you try to pour something positive into me, it's just spilling right off the top, then I need somebody who will give me a chance to pour out a little bit of what was in that cup, even if it was a negative or unique or traumatic experience. And so I think taking the opportunity to sometimes, rather than just immediately cut off a situation and walk away and be upset and assume somebody's intent was one way or the other, is to again kind of use that moment to pause and to kind of just check and kind of have them elaborate. And I mean, even sometimes when people are using, you know, off color, whether it be, racist or sexist comments and things like that, even just checking them on those things and kind of saying, again, what did you mean by that? Can you tell me more? Tell me why you said that? I'm interested to hear more about that. That kind of puts them on the spot in a way that neutralizes things in some way. It's not sometimes the conflict that maybe even they were expecting. And sometimes there may be a story underneath that little joke or that little comment that maybe they needed somebody to hear it and to kind of let them know that maybe something did happen to them that was inappropriate, or that maybe they need some affirmation of some sort, and they've never had anybody who asked them, why did you say that, or why do you feel that way? We used to always hear that old comment about reverse discrimination, for example. And usually it's always going to be some case where it's, oh, my cousin didn't get into such and such a place because of this situation. But maybe nobody ever really listened to that story and kind of talked out, well, have you thought about these other aspects of that situation? Have you thought about these other aspects of society? It could be that nobody ever really had that conversation with that person. And so they just always had that one little hurt that they hung on to and that filled their cup, and they never had a chance to take anything new in and to spill out any of that old cup. So I think extending the conversation and kind of being a little bit uncomfortable sometimes to have those conversations, even when it's not a fun conversation, but it kind of needs to happen in order for the relationship to continue. Sometimes we have to work through that and kind of just, you know, get it out on the table.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, definitely. Stephanie, hold that for me because I want you to comment on a comment that we have coming in from Ashley. It says, if you never take anything personally, how do you ensure that self-reflection happens based on others' responses or reactions to you? Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, it does make sense. So if you never take anything personally, how do you ensure that you're reflecting, like you are, looking inward to, I guess, for growth and self-development? I think is that what you guys are getting as well? All right, Stephanie, you want to tackle that conversation?
Sure. And thanks, Ashley. Hi. But yes, I think that's a great question. I think it's a difference. It's like reflecting, like in mindfulness, right? And as they describe in the book, you can observe and listen to what they're saying. But it's like if you think about you having this barrier between the words and or like say I don't mean to sound corny, but like say you actually are like you're a warrior, right? We all are going for our own battles in life, and that's not corny. That's just true. So we're a warrior and we have a shield, right? We see the darts coming, right? but you have to have the shield. So like the question is, are you going to put the shield up, right? Because no matter what the negative things, like maybe somebody could have said the same. Like I do this with Zoe, my daughter, all the time. If I catch myself getting, like, say I'm tired, and she's done something because she's tired and she's not focused, and she's not the same Zoe that I would see most of the day because she's sleepy too. I might catch myself saying something that won't be productive to get us where we want to go. So like I need to pause, reframe genuinely what it is I want to say. And so if it's coming at me, I need to put the shield up because those negative comments are going to come and I'm not going to let it pierce my skin. Now, once they get on the shield, right, I need to look at them, review them. Now, these are the comments, right? Because maybe I did do something that warranted someone saying something that wasn't so pleasant to me. So I can review. It's like all in quick time though, right? Like moment to moment, second to second, milliseconds, observing what was thrown at you, and then coming back with a demeanor of firmness but kindness. And that's the way I do it, because I don't have time and I don't have energy for negativity. I will cut somebody off in a kind way really quickly if they're coming at me the wrong way, because I also have my daughter's ear to protect. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I just think that there's a way to observe them non-judgmentally and yourself non-judgmentally so that you're just seeing it for what it is and taking what you need.
Cool. And actually, too, I think for me, if when you get to the point where you never take anything personally, maybe you're at the pinnacle of self-reflection. But I think that's the point of the book. It's ancient wisdom to teach that it's a lifelong practice, and it's something that you're always striving to um, refine or strengthen as you go along in life. As Rudy said, like it's not that he doesn't take anything personally, but as you grow and practice it more and more, you're able to let go. Some things you're able to let go a little bit of that liquid in that cup, as Rudy talked about, to be able to receive just a bit more over time. At least that's been my experience. I definitely used to take everything personally. And I think I'm leaps and bounds, even in the last 2 years. Stephanie, you knew me since, freshman year of college, which, says a lot, about taking things personally and just being all over the place. So I definitely have a lot of areas that I still need to grow in. And that's the point of this conversation. It's the point of talking with you guys and hearing, what you all are doing and what people in the comments are doing, because it's about that lifelong journey and growth. So that, for me, that's my take. That's when you get to the point where you don't take anything personally, you don't need to reflect anymore. At least I'm not going to anyway. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I'll be quick so Rudy can speak. What this made me realize is I think we need to like redefine what taking stuff personally might mean for ourselves, because it's like we're expecting that well, it's possible based on how most of us have been trained that it's like it's a difference between self-reflection on like if someone's giving me constructive criticism versus darts that have like poison at the end of it. And I already, because we criticize ourselves so much, we have the expectation that like somebody else's word is more correct than ours because maybe we're missing something. When you're with yourself all day, and if you really practice like self-reflection non-judgmentally, you will get so good where like I had an instance where it's the last time I let somebody make me cry. It was a comment. Somebody didn't even know me and I was sitting there crying and I realized like she does not know the whole picture. Why did I let that in? So I had to not judge myself for letting it in and say, well, next time, put a little wall, reflect, and then fix it. If you make a mistake, fix it quickly. Keep it moving.
Yeah, that's a good comment too, and I guess you do have to make that definition of what does it mean to not to take anything personally. For me, it's like not to make anything about me. Um, Another example is like like my kids do what kids do. kids grow up and you have to tell them the same thing 100 times. We were the same way. A lot of times I get in my head, I'm like, what is it about me that I'm not getting this message through to them, right? Like they don't want to disrespect me. They don't, they're not bad kids. They aren't right trying to like defy me. It's like, what is it that's like that I'm not communicating? And it's just like, don't take that personally. Like they're just, develop. Where they are developmentally. You work with these kids. Like you have all the science and the research to support exactly where they are. And so like I have to use that. I have to use evidence to like disarm me a lot of times to when I notice something, I'm making something about me. So that's what I mean when I read. Don't take anything personally. I read. Don't take anything in and make it about you, because then that starts to tear down, other things. Rudy, did you have something you wanted to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, just the only little thing I would add. I really liked what Stephanie was saying earlier about considering, is this thing that's being shared with me helpful or not. I really like that, and I think perhaps for some people another way of thinking about it along those lines is just essentially looking at things more objectively. To kind of say, kind of almost like hold it up, just like we want to in mindfulness hold up our thoughts. So kind of say like, is this true? And I think one thing that's interesting to me is, for some folks, because of how they process and whatnot, some folks just are not, as diplomatic in their sharing criticism. And so, sometimes people just literally don't even have the capacity to share it in a nice way. And so sometimes for us, that then means we're going to right away be defensive and right away, try to brush it off. But for me, I find that that's pretty interesting, because sometimes when people have a real rough demeanor, I have to be real deliberate in kind of recognizing that and realizing, all right, they're saying this in a rough way, but let me see if there's a little bit of nugget of truth in there that's going to be helpful to me still. And I know that they have got that rough demeanor and they're rough around the edges or whatever. They're not diplomatic. That's got nothing to do with whether they might be sharing something that really insightful for me. That is a little bit of a nugget of truth that is objectively true about something I need to improve on. And so I don't want to shoot the messenger, so to speak, if the message has some value and some truth.
Yeah, that's important too because that like the stuff I got back today from the review, it just wasn't. I'm a very reflective person, but like it was just wrong. Like there's a white teacher in my script named Miss Washington, and this person rather, I'm sorry, is like just to let you know, Washington is a historically African American name, and I'm like, so the first president was black? Like, what are you saying? Like, it's just like wrong information, right? And it's like, it's like, that is when you got to step back and like, this is clearly not about you, you know.
But can I
So,
say one thing? Like,
yes, taking constructive feedback is one thing, but the other stuff, man, is like, go ahead, Steph.
when they do that, it just means that they're not for you, right? Like there's a saying, like everybody comes from different religious backgrounds. So, but it said like if you can replace the universe with God, whatever you want to do. But when things don't happen, it's leading you somewhere else, right? It's for a purpose. Like if they aren't smart enough to like how can we flip the script? Like they clearly don't deserve what you have to offer, because once it gets accepted and they have that mindset, they're still going to screw it up and it's not going to be worthy of your time. So it's like like repositioning this gatekeeper thing again, right? Like your worth versus theirs. Like there's some phrase in and not that I've never quoted Jay-Z before, but I was listening to their song. I won't say the name because this is kids probably watching it, but Ape Blank, and it was like, I don't need you, you need me, right? Now, we don't have to be arrogant about that, right? But we can say that we're all co-creators in this world about what we manifest, right? So if you keep taking that every time, like, it's not that one person needs somebody more than the other here, but they clearly don't deserve you if they don't get something as small as that, right?
You tell them, girl. So, Rudy, I'm going to have you give us a closing word, but first, let me just close out and thank everyone for joining us who have been here with us to discuss the second agreement. We're going to be discussing the third agreement in 2 weeks. I mean, through 2 weeks, the same day and time, Monday at 6. We'll be discussing the third agreement. Please join with us. If you watch this playback later on in the week and you have something to share, please comment your thoughts in the comments. We'll discuss them on our next live because your thoughts are important to us. And I thank Dr. Stephanie Akamani and Rudy Ruiz, sorry, I used to have a speech impediment, guys, for joining us today. You can find them both on IG. Rudy is actually one of our partners on YouTube, The Rudy Effect. So you can look at that YouTube channel, and he's on Instagram, _Rudy_Effect. Stephanie is Dr. Stephanie Akamani, of course. You can find them both on Instagram and other platforms as well with the great work that they're doing. Thank you guys for being here again for a second conversation. It took quite a while to get on the books, but I'm glad that we did it. I'm excited for the next conversation. I'm excited to see if we get any comments, anything that anyone wants to share. Rudy, you can close us out.
Thanks so much, Robert. We know that, probably our biggest challenges in life is interacting with the other billions of people around the world. And oftentimes that challenge is biggest by those who are closest to us. And so it can be difficult to follow agreement number 2, don't take anything personally. And I, for one, can attest to that. That can be a challenge, but I just want to encourage you that by tuning in and by thinking about these things, you're being active in your own personal development and growth. And so I would just encourage you to protect your peace and prioritize your peace. And so when somebody says something to you that, rubs you the wrong way or is tough to process, I would just ask you to take a moment to pause and think about it. Think about whether it's true or not, and whether it's true or not, how you might act on it to continue your growth, and rather than to, again, take away your peace. So wish you all the best and look forward to reconnecting soon to discuss agreement number 3.
Thank you, everybody. See you for agreement number 3, which is don't make assumptions. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks.